Okay, so modelling. So I'm assuming that you've watched the other video or you've paid attention in class and you're now familiar where the various things we're going to use are. So I'm just going to get cracking. I'm going to start with a box. I'm going to follow roughly along with that hammer tutorial. I'm going to do it more or less off the top of my head, so don't worry if it's not exactly right. But it's just the principles you're getting right. It's learning how to use the tools rather than copying something verbatim. So I made my box. Go to create panel, box, just drawing it out. I'm going to maximize that viewport so I've got a better view. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to turn on edged faces. So I can either go to default shading and check edged faces, or I can just push F4 and that'll shortcut it. Now, it doesn't look like much has happened there, but it has. It's just not got that many edges. So I'm going to resize this. So before I do anything else to it, I'm going to make sure my main object is the size I want. So I want this to be roughly square, I think. So we'll do, I don't know, 60. We'll talk about units and stuff another time. And then we'll do, I don't know, 40. And then we'll do 40. That sounds about right. That's about much. Let's change the height to 30. So you can just go and type this in, or you can use the wee slider button things to go up and down. And then I'm going to put in a couple of more edges so that I can actually change the shape of things. So the way 3D objects work, actually I'll show you in a minute, I'll just do this now. To be able to model anything beyond sort of changing the size of it, you pretty much have to just right click on the object, convert to editable poly. Don't worry about mesh and patch or NURBS. Editable poly is the one you want. And what you'll see is the modify panel now changes. So you've got vertices, edges, borders, polygons, and elements. And this, you'll see the object changes as it's selected. I'm going to add a few more edges to this just so it makes things a wee bit more obvious. So we'll just change that to 2 of each for now. Go back. So I just Control Z there to go back and undo, convert that to editable poly. You only get about 15, I think, undos, so be careful. Now if I select vertices, you'll see these blue dots appear. That's a vertex or a vertex. That is basically the building blocks of a 3D object. Vertices are joined together by edges, and edges are joined together by polygons. You can't have a polygon without having edges and vertices. You can have edges without polygons. Oh, not really actually. So if I select polygon here, select that polygon. If I delete that, then you'll see it still retains its shape. It's still got the 4 vertices here holding it together. But Control Z to undo. If I select a vertex here and delete it, then the whole thing disappears, because by removing that vertex, these polygons no longer know where they end and they just go away. So vertices are really the important thing. That's what you're going to be manipulating in order to model things, as your vertices. So if I'm going to move that to make the hammer, you can just move vertices exactly like you can move a whole object. You just select the ones you want to move. So you can either click on them one at a time. So you can click, hold Control, and that'll let you select multiples. And then I can go to my move tool and just move just those vertices, like so. Or what you can do is just click off it to deselect everything. You can draw boxes, like click on 3D space, drag a box over, and it'll select every vertex underneath. If you do something a bit silly and you're at that angle, say, and you go, oops, I don't want that one, you can hold Alt and click on it, and that'll deselect that one. And that's really the basics of modelling, is just moving vertices around. There's loads of different ways of doing it, and we'll cover them as the classes go on. So I'm just going to start showing you some of the other tools that you're likely to use. The vertices here, you can do exactly the same with polygons and edges, but if I select a polygon and move it out, you'll see it's going to drag the vertices along with it there. So getting used to how all these work together, helps a lot when it comes to learning how to model. You'll also get loads of different selections down here, and again, there's loads of stuff here, and you don't need to know what most of it does. We'll definitely cover most of it at some point, but certainly not just now. So the hammer, I'm going to select these here, and I'm going to use bevel. So if I click on the wee window for bevel, you'll see that pulls them out and kind of shrinks them down a wee bit. And you can adjust that here in this wee window. So if I change the height, you see it goes out further or shorter. And if I change the inset here, then you'll get smaller or bigger. Now, what you can do as well, and will be relevant for later in this tutorial, is you can change how they're affected. So I've got 4 polygons selected just now. Excuse me. That are being manipulated by this bevel action. If I push the wee thing at the top here, that's group, so it's doing them all. Local normal, we'll worry about later, but if you do that by polygon, you'll see it bevels them all out individually, like that. So sometimes that's useful, sometimes it's not, but you may want to do it. So if I'm just going to make this the top of the hammer here, remember I'm not following the tutorial, I'm just going to wing it. I'm going to go to bevel. I'm going to bevel it by group, so they stick together. I'm then going to extrude it, which is kind of like bevel, but doesn't shrink the end of it. You see that it doesn't have that option. I'm then going to bevel again, but what I'm going to do is change the outline so that it goes up again. And I'm then going to extrude that out. So you can either change it here, or once you've got them done, you need to take the wee ticking box in order for it to work. You can just drag the polygons out if you like. And then to do the claw bit at the back, I'm just going to go do basically the same thing. We'll select the 4, remember holding control to select multiples. You can also drag a box over it, but I don't want these ones selected, so I can then hold Alt and drag a box over that. But always make sure you've got what you want selected before you do anything, because otherwise you can run into trouble. Sorry. I'm going to extrude that out to here. And I'm then going to move up these vertices. So I'm just going to select the ones at the bottom there. Make sure I've got the right one selected. I hate this grid. I really hate the grid. It annoys the hell out of me. What the grid is it shows you the basic ground plane. Like you can hide it by pushing G, and it's just much nicer. So I'm going to grab those vertices, and I'm just going to move them up like that. And then what I can do is grab them and extrude it out. Like so, to make the shape of the hammer. Something that always confuses people is splitting that by polygons. So what I'm going to do is, I don't actually need this edge around the middle. That's actually going to get in the way of making this claw bit. So if you double click, if I click 1, you can go around and click them all, blah, blah, blah. They're what's called a loop going around the object. But if you double click it, it'll select the entire loop. And if I delete that, it's deleted the whole thing, because remember, it needs those vertices to hold together. But a pro tip is if you hold Shift and push backspace, hold Alt and push backspace, hold Control and push backspace, it will delete everything and then just sort of fill in the gaps, which is worth getting used to, and it gets rid of the vertices as well. So now to make the claw, I'm going to select these 2 polygons at the end, and I'm going to extrude them out, but I'm going to extrude them by polygon. So it doesn't look like anything's changed. But once it's done now, it's now separated them. So I can go in and move, I can go in and move that, and it separates. See, because I did it by polygon rather than by group. I did it by group at the front here, they all stuck together. Did it by polygon here, and they all moved apart. So I can now go in and just start making the claw part of the hammer. Now, the tutorial might not be exactly like this. Honestly, I can't remember what it's like. So, don't worry too much, if you're following this along. The whole point of this is really just to get you used to moving vertices. So I could just separate them out like that to make the hammer. That's going to bother me though, because that's off-centered out. So I'm just going to move that back. Sometimes you can eyeball things, sometimes you're better off actually using values to move things, but for now, don't worry too much about it being accurate. And then I'm just going to extrude these out again. Now, I don't need to worry about grouping that or whatever, because they're already separate. So that's the very basics of what's called kind of box modelling or polygon modelling. Polygon modelling can be a big term that covers a lot of methods. But for the most part, you're just selecting polygons, edges, and vertices, moving them around to make a new shape that you want. Obviously, there's way, way more to it than that. There's loads of different tools, ways to manipulate it. But learning to get used to moving these bits around is the first step in kind of learning how to model. So don't look ahead. Don't, try anything that, I mean, you can play around with it if you want, obviously, but you need to know these basic methods before you can pretty much do anything. So that is the start of your modelling, and I hope this video was helpful. I need to go now because we've got guidance in 2 minutes. Well, the level 6 guys do. So I'll see some of you in a wee minute, and I'll see the others of you at another time, I guess. Cool. See you, bye.